Oh, it's Sunday morning. Good morning, everybody. It's our Sunday morning coffee with Cioffi show. And I am still in Savannah, Georgia, if only for a short time longer, because I think right after the show is done, I am checking out of the hotel room, which is, by the way, right next to a Cracker Barrel, which is just perfect planning on my part. So I am going to head over there for breakfast and then hit the road because now it's on to Marietta, Georgia. Savannah. I've got one child up in Marietta with my grandson and my son-in-law, and then I have still another child running around somewhere in the United States. I think in Connecticut or something. But I hope everybody's had a great weekend so far. Boy, was it cold this morning. I have to tell you, it was just an odd experience as I got up around 5 a.m. or so. I went outside here. It was every bit of 50 degrees when I looked to see what the temperature was. But for some reason, it just really felt cold. And I noticed that yesterday when I was out in the daytime, in the morning hours, even though the numbers are so much higher than what we're used to up in the Northeast, for some reason it feels colder here. I don't know if it's the temperature dew point combination or the ruralness of the area. Sometimes it just felt different. And then the other thing I noticed that even though the dew points were low, there was condensation all over the place. My car looked like it had been just hosed down, or that it had even rained all night. Most of the other cars, the same thing. I forgot. I lived in the South. It's starting to bring back some memories. I lived down in New Orleans many years ago. We're talking 30 plus years ago, and I am recalling now how it in that semi-tropical or subtropical climate that's down there, even when it was dry, you still got at night you'd still get all this condensation all over the place. Just very strange. Okay, so we've got a few things to look at going forward this coming week. A lot of volatility now because we're starting out this morning with temperatures in many places in the teens and single digits. We're going to be jumping up into the 50s on Monday and maybe up even above 60 in some places on Tuesday, only to send it down the other way. And then we're going to put a little wave on this cold front that's coming through on Tuesday and maybe produce a stripe of snow on the other side. I don't know. I had my doubts about this the last couple of days. I still have my doubts about it this morning, even though some of the overnight models did come out a bit more robust on it, including the European, which oddly enough was the most robust of them all. But I would just be really careful here with a setup like this. It's not that it can't happen; it certainly can. That you could wind up with a few inches out of this on the backside. It has happened from time to time. I'm just a little suspect given where we are in the month of December. We're still in the inside the first 10 days. Yeah, we sort of underperformed from the storm last week in places down along the coast. So I just want to be a little cautious with how the models handle it. I do have a few things to show you from that respect. We'll have the new NAM done in about 15 minutes. And we also have the new SREF model on the plumes, which we don't get to use very often, but they do tend to be a bit on the useful side when it comes to trying to gauge a system and whether it has possibilities or not. We never look at those plumes from the standpoint of the specific numbers they throw out. More importantly, we just kind of look at the trend and see which way they're moving. If they're moving higher or they're moving lower, usually a pretty good indicator of where all of this is all playing out. So everybody's got their coffee, you're sitting back with your breakfast, and let's get started here. I want to first start with the lows this morning because they were low. Radiational cooling last night, clear skies, light winds. Jason Schaefer, you point out some of the low temperatures in the Pine Barrens. They were darn low for sure. These are some of the numbers here that I found across Long Island. 10 was the coldest spot at West Hampton Beach Zabriskie Airport. In East Hampton at the airport there, 13. In New Jersey, Sussex getting down to 9. In South Jersey, it was in the mid-teens to around 20. This is usually a case where Central and South Jersey radiates like mad, and they did radiate. It just didn't quite radiate as much as they did up to the north, and that's probably a result of the snow cover that exists as you go north and west of New York City and up the Hudson Valley. Down to 9 for a low at the Annandale site along the Hudson River. Let's see what that one is. It's called Hudson. I don't know if that's Hudson, New York, which is 1. Who's the -4 south of Albany? Glenmont. Albany, Eagle Mills got to 1 above. A couple of minus signs here up towards Saratoga Springs. Well, Saratoga Springs there, -4 for a low. -3 in Cambridge. So, a lot of places here up out in Mass at Bear Falls, Ware River at Bear Falls, -5. -8 at the Orange Municipal Airport. I'm not sure what city that is near. Down to -8, and even some below zero readings heading up further north. -11 at the Jeffrey Airport, Silver Ranch in New Hampshire, and near Keene, it got down to 8 degrees below zero. So pretty crazy night all across the Northeast, just darn right cold, and now the core of this cold air is beginning to pull out, and that's a good thing, and we're going to start to see weather temperatures start to move up. And then before it's all said and done, we're going to probably see highs reaching up into the 40s, in at least from New York City on south. I think it'll get to 40 or better. Meanwhile, as far as watches and warnings are concerned, in the east it's pretty quiet. Dense fog advisories this morning in parts of Arkansas, northwest Mississippi, western Tennessee, and southeastern Missouri, and also across much of the coastal bend of Texas. Winter weather advisories stretch east to west or west to east from Montana to across North Dakota through central Minnesota and northwestern Wisconsin. A couple of counties in northwest Wisconsin under a winter storm warning. We've got some advisories also scattered down into parts of Utah and Colorado. And winter storm warnings are up for the Sierra Nevadas. That continues from yesterday. And from the standpoint of snowfall, in that advisory stretch from Montana to Wisconsin, we're looking at generally, it looks like there's a fairly solid band of 2 to 4, 2 to 5 inch snows, and then you get into some higher amounts in and around the Lake Superior, where you're seeing some 7, 8, and 9 inch amounts. And of course, you've got the big snow amounts still coming in addition to what has already fallen in the Sierra Nevadas. That number's kind of gotten reduced now, down to an additional 1 to 4 inches. And let me just widen that out a little bit here out in the west. You can see up the Rockies, a few stripes there of 6 plus, but they're very, very thin. Otherwise, most areas in that 1 to 4, 2 to 5 inch range. So no major storms here going on. We're also seeing on the map today that some of the snow that you see showing up in parts of Maine and upstate New York and down into the central Appalachians is actually the very beginnings of what will occur Tuesday night and Wednesday. The forecast at the moment only goes out to Tuesday 7 p.m. I did notice that Mount Holly on their on their forecast out to Wednesday morning has already put out some low numbers. I mean, they just have an inch accumulation at most of the stations in their coverage zone in eastern PA and in New Jersey. So we'll see where they go from here, and we'll start to see those maps maybe get populated in the next 24 hours or so. And with respect to the surface map, the core of our cold air is right overhead. This high is moving out. We've mentioned the last several days there's no blocking around, so there's nothing really to hold this cold air in. You've got the next frontal system dropping down into the northern plains. Of course, this being responsible for the snow that's happening today with high pressure Really cold air up here, by the way. Temperatures well double-digit below zero in the provinces here in Canada, and the northeast to east wind setting up over the Dakotas going to cause some sort of that overrunning snow, but no wrapped up low here. So the amounts are contained, and of course you've got energy that's come into the west. We've got low pressure in Northern California that's moving east. That's energy that's dropping in the southern part of the jet stream. And we continue to see this kind of split flow out in the west. It's pretty interesting that held on and continues to hold on both in the short and long range, which we'll get to in a moment. But in the meantime, we're kind of in a relaxed period here in a sense. The jet stream is just moving systems along from west to east today. We're already seeing high clouds streaming into the northeast ahead of the next round of changes, and low pressure that's going to be running across the north of the northern lakes in southern Canada, and then continuing on eastward with the trailing cold front. You've got some tropical moisture coming in off California and Baja California, heading northeastward into the southern plains. And also, if you look off the southeast coast of the U.S., you've got some moisture gathering here, and there's going to be a little bit of a moisture feed coming out of the Atlantic and heading up to the north when we set up for the rain on Monday. So it's going to probably produce a max area of rain of an inch to an inch and a half from, let's say, from just west of New York City on eastward into southern and central New England. Now, this area has also, the areas interior in southern New England and central New England, of course, have the deep snow cover, so we'll have to watch to see whether that creates some flooding issues with some snow melt. And also, we're going to start to see this moisture is running into the Ohio Valley, so that's going to also swing into the east. So we're getting it from the Atlantic side, and we're also getting it swinging in from the west. That two-pronged moisture source here, there's a bit of a gap that sets up in the middle where the rainfall amounts are going to be a bit less across Pennsylvania and parts of upstate New York. So that might actually be a bit of good news in those areas that have a foot or more of snow on the ground, that perhaps the heaviest rains will be to your east. So we can, maybe worry a bit less about the prospects for substantial flooding. Not too much going on the radar this morning, but we are beginning to see some showers popping up off the North Carolina coast. The Northeast is very quiet. Not much yet going on in the Great Lakes or the Ohio Valley and down into the Gulf states. Pretty quiet there. You see the action from the moisture coming in across Baja and Southern California, producing some showers running into parts of Arizona and New Mexico. And we're also seeing they had quite a bit of rain in parts of Northern California yesterday. So that precip now into the eastern part of the state and into the Sierra Nevadas, where we're seeing some snow. And of course, you can see the gathering of moisture across Montana, where we have that large area of winter weather advisories that start there and go all the way east toward Wisconsin. So let's take a look at what's happening with regards to our upper air pattern. I've got the new NAM out so far out to, well, should be out a little bit more than this. Let me switch to the other one, see if that's out a little bit further. And no, it seems to be stuck right now at 51 hours. Okay, so you notice that the flow here is pretty much west to east now. The trough that's earlier back on Friday moved on through, brought the cold air in, and that's now offshore. The flow is turning more westerly. We're going to start warming things up. And meanwhile, out in the west, you've got this short wave in the southern stream. You've got a short wave that's in the northern stream that's moving eastward, and that is going to take us through Monday. That southern shortwave kind of drops down into New Mexico and just hangs back a little bit. The northern shortwave runs ahead. And this is now, when we get to Tuesday morning, you notice how you have this almost, I would kind of describe it as this sort of a broad bowl trough here. It's not one of those sharp V-shaped troughs. It's got this, much more of a gentle look to it. and the southwest flow along the eastern seaboard, of course, bringing up some moisture, some of it being fed off from the Atlantic for Monday night, and then the flow becomes more southwesterly on Tuesday. And we've got a cold front that's going to be the boundary zone, and you've got that southern shortwave that's there. So this is going to get this system, this southern shortwave is going to get ejected to the northeast. It'll be interesting to see how well it holds together, because that ultimately will be the determining factor with regards to what's going to happen here for Tuesday night into Wednesday. And these types of situations, more often than not, wind up where the precip just shuts off and you really don't see much of anything out of it. The rain just ends and then it just turns cold and dry. That's how it usually happens. But you do have instances where it behaves a bit differently. And I'm going to go back to this upper air 500 millibar map where you can see the actual wind barbs at that level, so you can look at the flow. So what's happening is the cold front is being pushed along by the northern part of that jet stream. And because of the very broad nature of the upper flow, the winds across Ohio, Pennsylvania, New York State, and into New England here are mostly either west-southwest or southwest. There's a little bit of a westerly component to it, but the real push is going to have to wait for this northern stream system to kind of shift a bit more to the east, and that's going to take another day or so for it to happen. So in the meantime, you've got this southwest flow. The cold front itself will only be able to make it so far south when it's going to wind up stalling out. And it's not going to stall out until Tuesday night, but I'm just drawing it because this is the last map that they have available on the new NAM, at least so far. So you're going to get this front that's going to try to move southeastward, and it's only going to be able to get so far. It's going to have to wait for this one last wave to move on out to the northeast, and then this northern part of the jet stream kind of swings in. So it's one of these very delicate, I would describe it as a very delicate balance of getting that cold air, enough of that cold air in here so that you wind up changing the rain over to snow. If the cold air comes in a big rush, if that northern trough were to just sort of overwhelm everything and squash that southern system and keep it flat and squashed, then you would just be cold and dry and kiss it goodbye, and that would be the end of it. On the other hand, you have to have that sort of that as I mentioned, the delicate balance to get how much cold air gets in and where the frontal boundary is. If not enough cold air gets in, if the northern trough were to sharpen up further to the west, and you wind up taking that southern system more to the northeast, and it's stronger, then the front maybe gets hung up a little bit closer to the coast, and cold air doesn't enough cold air holds back and waits for the wave to go by, and then the cold air comes in. So you have to have it just right, just enough cold air from the northern part of the trough, and then just enough of that moisture coming up from the south. One of the things we did notice from the overnight runs is that the European and the GFS in particular, they kind of went much more robust with respect to the amount of precipitation that the system is going to develop. So let's run what we do have of the NAM. On the actual surface map, we actually have it out to 84 hours now. So that's good. All right, so let's take a look at how this plays. And of course, your first high is going out. That's a given. And you have a southwest flow that takes over, starts the warm up, which we'll see the temperatures, as I said, move up into the 40s. These are all southwest winds. Your frontal boundary is somewhere up in here. And here you've got easterly winds with your high. They got the H there. The actual isobar is further to the east. But you're seeing that overrunning precip across the northern plains. You've got a low here down in eastern Colorado. That's going to shoot up to the northeast and much further northwest than how I drew that last arrow. So we'll run it along. In the meantime, you see that Atlantic moisture develops and brings in some rain into coastal North Carolina and into southeastern Virginia, and actually by the early morning hours has some showers up to New York City. This is at 2 or 3 a.m. And that gives that coastal areas there a little extra boost of precip. In the meantime, you've got that subtropical moisture we showed you on the satellite coming in from Baja California. That's moving northeastward. So you've got rain swinging across the Ohio Valley for later Monday into Monday night and early Tuesday. Now that low is gone. It's now a 982, not a half bad deep low either, in eastern Canada there, up near Montreal and moving along. And this is tomorrow morning. The actual front, it's always, sometimes it's really hard to pick it out, but the actual front, I can sort of pick out a kink here, and yet there's some kind of wind shift that goes on back a little bit further to the east of the second area there. So you probably what we have is, your real cold air is up to the north, and you get your first shot of cold air. The leading edge is a little bit further to the east. So that front plays through here on the NAM and then, by the way, this is my first look at this today. I haven't seen it yet, so we're looking at it together. So the front comes through and it starts to stall out, and by the time we get to 10 o'clock Tuesday evening, you see that narrow stripe of snow. Here's your wave right there. Okay, that 1016 flat wave. And when I say a flat wave, it's flat. It's just running. It's a little ripple that's just kind of running along, almost right along the frontal boundary, which was almost a straight line. You're not getting an intensifying low here. You're getting overrunning. Pretty much that southwest wind aloft. You have those cold northerly winds that may try to turn northeasterly. Actually, where they do turn northeast is where you're seeing, this stripe of snow that breaks out here during Tuesday evening, north and west of New York City and north and west of Philadelphia. Now, your wave is in on the South Carolina-Georgia border here by 4 a.m., and then it makes that big jump. It's actually either one low or a series of lows in that long frontal boundary. That's how flat this is. But there's your stripe of snow on the NAM model. By Wednesday morning, I have that southern edge a little bit too far south, but you can see it on the map, and I'll do it on a close-up. And this is at 7 a.m., 10 a.m., 1 p.m., and done. So, it looks like the NAM on this run was a little bit more robust than the last one. Let's get a close-up view. In the meantime, by the way, there is some snow and rain coming into the Pacific Northwest. So you've got more energy coming into the western part of the United States. Everybody else is kind of on the quiet side. And this is also is a very cold high that is coming down for the middle and latter part of this week. So this wave is actually very important in terms of the scope of bringing down a shot of very cold air into the plains and the Great Lakes, Ohio Valley, and into the eastern part of the United States. Now let's go close up and see what the snow area looks like here, where we could just kind of view it up from the northeast. And I'll also swing over to the southeast because there's some snow down there in parts of Tennessee and Kentucky. But you can see it here on the NAM model at 10 o'clock, 1 a.m. So 4 a.m. or so is when it really starts to get going, and it changes over along the coast fairly quickly. Get dark blue snow on the radar echoes. Actually, is probably moderate snow if it materializes. This is where you could wind up putting down a quick few inches out of this. And again, 1 o'clock in the afternoon, it's just left on Long Island and southeastern Connecticut and southeastern New England, and then it pulls away to the northeast. You never really get the low to develop very much. It starts to maybe develop a little bit long after it's south and east of Nova Scotia. The one thing I've been trying to pay attention to here is the amount of precip, because I think this is going to be, and unfortunately, we can't really break it down on the NAM. The other models have a 24-hour precip total, so This is not. I'm not going to be able to guess how much precip it is, and the 60-hour doesn't take us out far enough so that we can look at the Foose numbers, so that we're still another 24 hours away of getting good solid NAM precip numbers. But I guess we can guess it off the snow map, which is 10 to 1. So let's see how much of this is in. And I mean, you notice it's a pretty good stripe of snow that the NAM is generating 6 inch, this sort of narrow 6 inch band that runs from Western Virginia all the way up into southeastern New Hampshire, touching in the state of Maine. And the lighter blues are every bit of 3 to 4 inches for the coast. So you know what? Let's cut this in half. I think that's a fair thing to do with this because you're going to lose some of it initially anyway as the temperature's correct. And in a system like this, intensity of precip is very, very important because of the fact that it will help to cool lower the bottom part of the atmosphere down an extra couple of degrees. So it's really critical from the standpoint of trying to figure out how much snow you're going to get out of this, that you figure out the intensity. That really is going to be the most important thing because if you get a fair if the radar presentation is impressive enough, that knocks your temperatures down from say 36, 35 to 32, 31. And the snow accumulations are going to be a lot more at that lower temperature, obviously. So here's what the wider view of the NAM will show you the snows back through Tennessee, northwest Mississippi, even into northwestern Alabama and northernmost Georgia. I won't be that far north to see any of that for Tuesday, unless I decide to take my drive to Blue Ridge up on Tuesday and into Tuesday evening. But I don't think I'll chance it. But you can see how the area just kind of grows. That narrow stripe is north and west of New York City and north and west of Philadelphia. So if you want to use your imagination and just say, okay, that might be where you get like 2 to 3 inches or a little bit more. And in the lighter blue areas, which on this model is a 3 to 4 inch snowfall, will be more on the order of 1 to 2. I don't think that's unreasonable with what the NAM is doing, is just to be conservative and take these numbers and you cut them in half, and you sit and wait. Now, one of the things we've noticed today is on the SREF model on the plumes, they're actually the numbers aren't too shabby. Harrisburg is just under 5 inches on this, which kind of matches up to what the NAM is showing, and this is an increase from the prior run of the SREF. We're looking at 4.5 at Lancaster, Reading, a mean of 4.36. Trenton, looking at 3.22. In New Jersey, that is Belmar is just over 2 at about 2.5. Just 2.30. New York City, LaGuardia 2.86, White Plains 3.97, Poughkeepsie 4.72. You can just on this SREF tool it's useful. Pittsfield, Mass. I just don't look at these numbers literally. Pittsfield gets 7, almost 7 out of this, if you want to believe it. Albany gets 5. Let's just take a look at Boston. Oh, before we might just look at New London. In Connecticut, 2.62. Again, it's not the to me, it's more important the trend rather than the actual number. 2.95 south of Providence and 3.52 north of Providence, and we'll do Boston one last time, and that 406. And by the way, just to be fair, let's just check. Let me just get a little wider here. Philadelphia, for our folks in Southeast PA, 2.52. Atlantic City, 1 point, whole inch for Atlantic City. South and west of Toms River, just under 2. Always like to look at Baltimore and Washington. Just under 2 at Baltimore, and an inch and 2/3 in Washington D.C. So And the trend is higher from the prior run. I think that's the most important takeaway when it comes to this. So, with respect to this particular system, I think we've got at least another good solid 24 hours before we have to even make any kind of commitment with regards to a forecast. So that's good. It buys us some time. And in the meantime, we'll see what the GFS does, which was also somewhat robust on the two overnight runs. I'm just going to go back to the upper air to look at the long range because it does look rather interesting going forward. We seem to be going into these spurts where the weather's calm for a week and then busy for a week to 10 days, and looks like we may be going into another busy period here. That southern part of the jet stream still remains pretty active. You can see there's another shortwave trough at the end of the week and into next weekend that lifts up the East Coast and moves up into Canada. And one of the things I noticed on this particular run is going into around December 18th, 19th, all of a sudden, take a look up, up in the North Atlantic and in northern Canada, you have a sudden rise in pressures again. And at least from the 0Z run, it didn't really show it on the 6Z, but on the 0Z run, and this is out at day 12, day 13, this is another blocky look that's showing up. 50-50 low, energy down in Kansas, more energy swinging down in the northern part of the jet stream toward from between Great Slave Lake and Lake Winnipeg, and a bit of troughing out near 160. So this does have a bit of a blocky look here. I would see if the new teleconnections have come in or not. But this is taking us toward Christmas, so it'd be interesting to see. And of course, the 6Z, the next run of the GFS had the complete opposite of this, where it had a trough in the west and a ridge in the east, but it loves to do that on the in-between runs for some reason. So this is a pretty interesting look that the GFS had. And let's see if the new teleconnections are in yet. This is from yesterday. Nope, not in yet. So from yesterday, of course, the off-the-wall positive NAO index that we have around the 12th or 13th starts to decrease and goes toward the neutral zone around the 21st, 22nd, interestingly enough. The EPO is negative, and then it's just slightly positive after that. No real clear signal from that one way or the other. And the PNA, which is strongly positive, drifts down toward the neutral line around the 18th, 19th, and then goes slightly negative. So I want to see what today's does, because again, it had that blocky look to it on the 0Z run. So pull up the surface map here so we can take a look at what's going to be happening later on in the week after we get rid of this thing on Wednesday. Hang on. So, hello, there we go. So you see that Atlantic moisture. I'm going to do, I always forget to switch to the radar. But you see that Atlantic moisture swinging up from the south, all this rain, Ohio Valley and Northeast. It's funny how we've got rain clear up to Caribou and up into New Brunswick. Okay, so this is this cold air really goes out. Shows you when you have no blocking what happens. Cold air really goes away, and only to come back. Remember, got that negative EPO. There's your wave on the GFS, which, as I said, from last night's runs, were fairly robust, considering the kind of system it is. Now, there has been behind it, there's still more southern energy that gets left behind. And there's yet another wave here that on the 0Z run and on a couple of runs before that, and this is for Wednesday night and Thursday, brought what looked like some significant snow possibilities for parts of North Carolina and southern Virginia. With that cold 1043 high over Lake Huron, that was pretty interesting to see. The models have been trying to show this for the last few days, only to lose it in the run from the overnight. So we'll see if it comes back today. But there's some argument to be made that there might be some leftover energy that comes up the coast on Thursday while there's still some cold air around. But that goes out to the northeast, actually just sort of fades away and sit there. There's no real low. It's more like an inverted trough. And then eventually you do get a low that forms on the coastal front. But look where the high is by the time we get to Friday. There's, again, no blocking. So it's eastern Maine, and it's flying out of here, eastern Nova Scotia, by Friday afternoon. So when low pressure comes up on Friday, maybe it's cold enough for a little snow at the start before it goes over to rain, and then you get rain with low pressure off the Jersey coast and moving to the northeast. One of the interesting things about this mid fall up until now, we've had a lot of systems here coming up in one form or another along the coast. Wonder if that's going to continue as we move on into the winter months, but it certainly seems like it wants to do that. And then as we head into through next weekend and beyond, we get cold and dry, and I'm starting to think that there will be some chances here as we head into Christmas around the 19th. And that's why I wanted to see the teleconnections off the 0Z run to see whether the indices were crashing toward the neutral line or perhaps rising from negative values up toward a neutral line. But unfortunately, it's not in at the moment. But whether that winds up being real or not, we're a long way away from figuring that part of the equation out. But at the very least, we can say that our relatively active weather pattern that we've been in is going to continue for a while. Still going to be, we're going to keep things on the busy side here. At least that's the way it looks to me. So let's get that EPO, NAO, and AO sagging and dropping like hip hoppers. Okay.